Douglas was a graduate from the hugely influential environmental art course at the Glasgow School of Art, and he was the first artist to win the Turner Prize for video art in 1996. K.364 is the name of what I believe to be one of Douglas's most important pieces of work, and it's a piece of work which to my mind has only changed and gathered and grown in its meaning since it was first created in 2011. The name K.364 comes from the name of a Mozart piece of music. It's the Sinfonia Concertante for violin, viola and orchestra in E-flat major. And it's one of Mozart's most celebrated pieces of music. It's an absolutely all-encompassing, beautiful example of the complexities and beauty of Mozart's work. And at the heart of the film are two musicians, Avery and Roy, who are the viola player and the violin player, who take centre stage as part of this piece of music. And the film focuses on these two musicians, these two friends, as they journey from their home in Berlin through to Poland, where they're going to play with the chamber orchestra in Warsaw. Avery and Roy are Israeli musicians of Polish descent, and we follow them on their journey. We see the train station, we see the train that they're travelling on, and we hear them talking as they make their way through Germany across into Poland. And of course, this is a hugely meaningful journey. They talk about their families, they talk about being children of survivors, and the journey that we follow them through takes them along the cityscapes. We see stations, we see the train tracks, and we pass through the different stops along the way, right the way through the very dark forests, which of course just a few decades ago would have meant something very different to people who were deported and taken out into Poland, into the death camps. It was a hugely significant and poignant journey for them to be taking, and they talk a lot about the significance of seeing those landscapes and how we can all have incredibly subjective views of our surroundings depending on our own and our family's own experiences of trauma and of survival. And so for many people looking out on those forests, for example, and at those train stations, but particularly the forests and all of their what many of us would see as very rich and beautiful and sublime romanticism, for many other people are forests which housed and hid dark horrors. And it's that contrast between subjectivity and how we can see things very, very differently, despite the fact that we're looking at the same scenery, at the same objects, at the same landscapes, which is also at the heart of this film. The film culminates in the most beautiful performance by Avery and Roy with the chamber orchestra of this incredible piece of work by Mozart. And so, as well as all of the horrors that we're asked to reflect upon and all of the generational traumas which they carry and which many, many millions of people carry, we're able to see that there is a battle, or even perhaps a balance, with the very fleeting beauty of music and the role that music and art and culture can play in our lives, how vital it is for culture to connect us in these ways. And the past is never very far away in this film. There is a big section of the film which is taken over to a swimmer in the pool in Poznan, which is one of the stops along the way as they travel into Poland. And the swimming pool used to be a synagogue, and it was turned into a swimming pool by the Nazis, and it is still used today as a swimming pool. Again, beautiful, sublime, richly coloured, jewel-coloured scenes of the swimming pool, with the body swimming and floating through it. But you can't escape the fact that it is in a building which was changed from its original use because of absolutely horrific historic circumstances. So the past and present are always very, very close in this film. And it's that idea of duality between the past and present, between the colourful and the light and the dark, between good and evil, which is present in a lot of Douglas's work and is very, very present in this particular work. And we see that duality again in that we're dealing with two men. We're dealing with two instruments, similar but very different, with the viola and the violin. We have two screens in the space. And in Gallery 1, we have two sets of burnt scores, and we have two text works on the walls as well. So these reflections and mirrors of each other, and the duality that appears in so much of Douglas's work, is very much present. When we first started talking to Douglas about this show and about making this exhibition with him, we'd scheduled it to be held in April 2020. And when we were first talking to Douglas about the film and about the show here at DCA, we were deep in the news about Brexit and trying to understand what it would mean for Scotland, what it would mean for the UK, what it meant for those of us with a sense of being European to suddenly have our borders changed somehow, and to think about what our connections were with our friends, our family, our colleagues, our people all over the world who we've connected with. What does that mean in a European context when that suddenly changed so drastically? And this film felt like a really interesting exploration of some of those issues that many of us were feeling and were getting played out around Brexit. The idea of shifting borders and of shared cultures, and particularly for the EU and the idea of modern Europe being born out of the horrors of the Second World War. The very idea of modern Europe being about sharing and about being together as a contrast to being split and being separate. So when we first scheduled this work to come here to DCA and to be shown here, and it is its first screening in a public space in the UK, it was very much with that political and cultural context. Of course, when we had to postpone the show, it became very clear to us that we weren't going to be able to open in April 2020. As we continued to talk to Douglas about the works and to talk to him about the meaning of those works over the last couple of years, we could see that the meaning had shifted and grown yet again. And this is one of the reasons why I think it's such an important piece of art, not just of Douglas's, but at all. The piece then became, in the context of COVID-19 and the pandemic, about contact with other people. It became about travel. It became about how we could be with friends and family. It was about how we could experience live music again. So it gathered all of that additional meaning. And now, since announcing that we are having the show here at DCA and it actually opening here, the context has shifted and has grown yet again with the horrifying news that comes through every day about the military atrocities that are taking place, the invasion of Ukraine. And again, thinking about the impact on people, on refugees, on people having to flee in huge numbers to find safety, about that basic human right to have safety, to have refuge, and what that means for us now being, it is as prevalent today and as important and as vital now as it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago. But that different political context that we find ourselves in now compared to 6 months ago has only added to the meaning and the power of this work as we consider, again, what it means to have a shared culture and to have colleagues and friends and loved ones across the world that we want to reach out to and share our lives with. The music holds all of that together. It is immensely powerful, these three wonderful movements that swoop and encompass you as you're in that space. And in many ways, the three movements of the piece echo the three parts of the film as well, which are shown across the two screens: the journey, the swimming pool, and the final orchestral piece. And the orchestral piece again links back to the works on the wall that we have, the burnt dark scores, these beautiful, delicate, framed objects which contain the remnants, the burnt remains of the violin and the viola scores, which have been framed together, opening out almost like a book onto those walls. And Douglas has a long history of burning objects, of scorching works to create new ones. So it's an immensely destructive piece of work, but out of it, something very beautiful and delicate has also been created. And it made all of us again think about the EU, about our friendships, about how we recover and try and pull something out of the atrocities which have been happening over the last couple of years and have been happening more recently. So all of these works come together. They exist beautifully separately, but the works come together hopefully to get people to immerse themselves in the joy of the music and the beauty of that Mozart piece, but to think about our connections and to think about what joins us together as humans and to think about our shared culture and our shared humanity.